So first of all, I want to thank everyone for being here and for giving me the opportunity to learn from you, and for having been brought here. I'm not living in the States. I live in Yerushalayim, and that's my base of work. So we had a wonderful convergence of circumstances that allowed me to come and participate this time around, and I'm so happy that I am here, that I made it, and just the opportunity to be in the room with so many people who are so deeply invested in our future, in education, which is our future, right? So, like, Ashreinu, Matov Chelkeinu. How fortunate are we? You know, how good is our lot? So, you know, we're going to be having a whole bunch of presentations. Grantees are going to share with us. I've met some of them, you know, seen some of the work that they've done, and the thoughts that are coalescing in my mind about it is that I think we have to sort of pan back a little bit, because it's easy to get caught up in trying to accomplish the goal through the creation of ever more sophisticated or fine-tuned tools that I would call chomer, substance, material, curricula, different approaches. And that film that we saw last night, you know, this is personal. Those AI avatars really reminded me of this. You know, AI avatars could be real masters of chomer, of the material. And we all know, we're all in the same room, we all know that the chomer, the material, is never, ever going to be enough. So I want to explore a little bit about what is enough. You know, this process of the transmission, of what it is that we seek to share with our students, and how that's supposed to get across in some way that both suffuses and transcends the material that we provide for them. So that's a deeper discussion, because then the focus, the lens, is not on the student anymore. The lens is going to be on the educator. It's a fact that we can't give what we don't have. So this, you know, attempt to sort of pull it back a little bit, I want to explore some Talmudic models, you know, some narratives, these images that are very powerful, that maybe help us to frame it a little bit and provide a lens through which we can sort of re-examine our own roles and see, and our own roles, you know, not everybody here is a classroom teacher. You know, we have heads of school and funders and innovators. And so wherever we're coming from, whatever our angle is, there's something else to focus on. And the way it's described is through using this term tzura. There is chomer, there's material, and the substance is kind of tangible, right? It's in books, words that emerge from the mouth. It can be recorded. Maybe it could even be algorithmically synthesized and collated and kind of creepily transmitted across the screen. But sorry for that. I'm not alone, right, in the creepiness of that.
You're not alone.
I am not alone. Oh, that also can be itself, you are not alone. So, yeah, I want to focus on the tzura. The tzura is a kind of philosophical term that is, it means literally the form, but we have to be careful. It's kind of like the thing, the ineffable thing that makes whatever it is what it is. Sounds, sorry, it sounds a little bit hard to pin down, because it is hard to pin down. The tzura, the ineffable, that X factor, that secret sauce, whatever it is, that of the dvar chokhmah, of whatever it is, that piece of wisdom that we're trying to transmit. So it's always tempting to stay in the place of the chomer, of the material itself, because it is simply more straightforward to stay in that, you know, we have material to cover, and we have goals to reach, and all of those objectives could really keep us from keeping our eyes on what the prize is, which is that something needs to get across that space between educator and student, which is really emerging not from the chomer, but from the teacher. And so teachers, and I think we could all look back and examine who are the people who had the real powerful influence on us in our own educational careers and our continued learning throughout our lives. Who really reaches us, who really touches us. And we know that there's something that's coming across, but it's really hard to pin down. And we may not be able to define it, but we know when it's there and we really know when it's missing. I was personally, little full disclosure here, total day school dropout. Lots of chomer. I didn't get the tzura. It took a long time. I mean, relatively speaking, it was probably not that long, but, in the course of a lifetime, but it felt at the time like a long time until finally I was given the gift of exposure to teachers who radiated the tzura, the real essence of what it is that they were teaching. And then it didn't matter so much what they were teaching. It didn't matter so much what they were, then the question of curricula, all this, it winds up being, in a certain sense, a little immaterial, the material, because the essence is the tzura, and that is in the hands or in the self of the teacher. So I want to share two different paradigms quickly, because I don't have a lot of time. So we have one very intriguing Gemara about the sage who was the redactor of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehudis. So very interestingly, he says, all of the Torah that I ever learned, all of the Torah that I have, I got in the merit of having seen the back of the neck of Rabbi Meir. What happened? How did he see the back of the neck of Rabbi Meir? Rabbi Yehudis, and his son were on Shabbos, sitting in their house, and they were being careful about Shabbos. So instead of clapping, percussively like this, they were being very, careful, and they were clapping like this. And Rabbi Meir passed by the open window, and he heard the clapping, and he suspected that they were clapping in a way that there are those who say that it's not permitted on Shabbos. So he called into the window, Rabbanon, Hutra Shabbata, like, oh, rabbis, is the Shabbos a free-for-all? Like, what are you doing? And then he ran off. He didn't want them to feel as though they were being under some kind of scrutiny, even though they were. So he sort of ran off. And Rabbi Yehudis, he said to his son, who's trying to rule over us, in our house? Like, who's mixing in here? And he looked out the window. And Rabbi Meir had run off, and the sages wore cloaks. They were very careful to cover a lot of their body. The cloaks went down to the fingertips and covered the back of the neck. And the scarf that he wore kind of flew off in the wind. And Rabbi Yehudis saw the back of Rabbi Meir's neck. All of my Torah, that's all of our Torah, right? Redactor of the Mishnah, it's the channel through which we have our Torah Shabbal Peh, our oral tradition, through seeing the back of Rabbi Meir's neck. And then the next generation, that's Rabbi Yochanan, later on, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, they said, and we only received all of the Torah that we have because we saw the finger of Rabbi Yehudis emerge from his cloak. He was, while teaching, maybe he was doing one of these like Talmudic, thumb things. So it emerged from the edge of that cloak, and we saw his finger. That's from where we have all our Torah. And the whole idea that from such a small aperture, that somehow the whole Torah is transmitted to these great sages through some small aperture of the person, via the physicality of the teacher. That this is something very hard for us to wrap our heads around. That something is transmitted through this radiation of chokhmat adam te'or panav, that the wisdom of a person illuminates their countenance. Something has to be projected outward, and in order for it to project outward, it must be experienced inwardly. So it's something that's deeply inward of the teacher that comes and emerges outward, and it doesn't have to do with the material, because it has to do with that teacher's, we're in the realm now of the mystical maybe a little bit, but it's like their dveikut. How connected are we to the Baal Imra, my connection, my bonding with my Creator who transmitted this Torah? And how do I expect that my student will receive it in the way that will stick without it coming along with its tzura? So I must have received this tzura. I must project this tzura. So I don't want to I gotta be careful of the time. One more minute, or maybe two. Apropos of learning that we did yesterday and the projects that we did. So nice to see, all that creative output on the way in. So we have this another very interesting, like a lens through which to see things. It says, a question in the Gemara, from where did those rays of light that were projected off of Moshe, from where did they derive? Where did they come from? So we have two different opinions, of course. So one of them is that when Moshe received the Torah, so he received these tablets. They were 6 hands' breadth cubed. The upper two says that God himself held on to those upper two hands' breadths of those tablets. And Moshe held to the lower two. And then there's this space in between. And the first opinion is that it's from that space between. The space that Moshe doesn't hold in his hand, and it's not held by God, it's between them, that Moshe's light that radiated and affected the Jewish people, that's where it comes from. So what's that space between? That space between, what I'm holding is what I've got. And it can also be a little bit the material, because it means what I can transmit. If I know it, I can share it, I can articulate it, I can teach it, I can make up activities around it, I can work in the material with it. I've got what to work with. But that intermediate space, that's all the place where I'm feeling the yearning of all that which I have yet to reach, I have yet to grasp. And that is the essence of where the Tzura derives from, where that higher form, that inner essence of Torah comes from, that it's this infinite potential of always reaching, never getting there, but always reaching again and again, and always towards contact with my Creator. And so I always want more and more and more, and that's what's radiating outward from that intermediate space. The second opinion is that Moshe wrote the scrolls. He wrote Torah scrolls, as we saw in the learning we did yesterday, Megillah. And he had a quill with ink. And when he came to the end of the scrolls, there's a little bit of ink left in that quill. And the Gemara says that Moshe, when he had that little bit left after completing the scroll, He'eviro al rosho, he passed it over his head. And the bits of ink that remained inside of the quill, they made an impression that then projected outward this radiation of light. So what's the ink that's left in the quill? Well, that's the stuff that you can't put down in writing. That's the stuff you can't transmit. But it has to be within you. So when it says that he Heviro al Rosho, that's something that the student receives from, but it's never articulated. And so I hope for everyone, for all of us, that we will continue grasping to that intermediate space of the luchot, of the tablets, and continue to be always aware that no matter what we are able to put into words, whatever we are able to transmit to our students, there's always that ink that's left in the quill. That's that desire. I have so much to give you. I have so much to share with you. I'm never going to be able. That's I think what the students need to receive. The infinite nature of the Torah that you will always strive for, and that they will be able to enjoy the light of, because it can never really be reduced to the material. Okay, thank you so much.